Hola, welcome back to Soul Mechanics. Please step into my office and sit down. Now, this one is, I have to apologize about the Trump video. I promised everybody a Trump video, and as it happens, you can't really make videos about the president, I guess, or really make statements about the president at all that have, certain tag words like gunshot or death or phrases such as tear him to pieces in it, because it's not really like people, you get flagged for that shit because it's not really like people that are searching. They kind of have like, it's not people that are reading or looking into these things. It's like where YouTube has, YouTube's gonna have subtitles. YouTube can have subtitles, and so obviously what the words you say are being read by a machine. And they have like a VI, or it's not a VI, it's going to be technically an AI system that's going to be searching for combinations of words that are just words in general, tag words like that, in combination with the general, the president, or the name of the president being, a compound in there, when it puts those words together entirely out of context. And that's really going to be what we're going to have a problem with, what we are having a problem with as regards artificial intelligence in general, like the programming of artificial intelligence. For any programmers out there that might ever see this, artificial intelligence programmers that happen to stumble upon this, which is going to happen, that will happen at some point. I'm going to go ahead and bet that you didn't know this, or at the very least you were struggling with this, but that's going to be, if you guys are searching for the key to life, essentially, to putting life into your instrument here, and making an artificial intelligence that is actually adaptable to, say, a really cool sparring partner android, I would love to have that. That would be like a dream come true. I'd marry an android, honestly. I love the concept, just the general idea, and we will have androids someday that have artificial intelligence, but the key to making actual artificial intelligence happen is going to be programming it in such a way as to have, an applicable sense of context, or be able to identify contextual frameworks. The fact that an artificial intelligence as it stands, what we have as artificial intelligence, can't really recognize context and contextual parameters. So that's going to be the key to making an actual artificial intelligence happen, is having it making it capable of recognizing context, which it cannot do at this point. And that's why, your video is going to get flagged if you put words like death or phrases like tear them to pieces in with, when you're talking about the president. So I had to remove that. And it sucks because I put a lot of work into it. It was a really good video, and I was super happy with it. It was huge. Like, I figured out how to, I had help. We figured out how to really move a lot faster, in the sense that we can compact time now, and we have a lot more available. It turned out to be kind of like a blessing in disguise, honestly, because what happened was the video got flagged, and then we had to take that down, and it led to making the video and using it's not really, I guess it is new tech, it's kind of apps and such that allow for me to move faster and allow for me to compact more time into the time that I'm using, into the measurements of time that I'm using. So, to compact space, really. It's a video conversion and such, and just all kinds of little neat tricks that allow for me to make the videos bigger, essentially. That it started chewing up space on Liara for some reason. It just kept chewing up more and more space, and I was losing space, and there was nothing I could do about it. So I had to factory reset her entirely, and I lost everything, like even my contacts and shit. Like, I lost anybody that's watching this that was in touch with me directly. I lost your contact info. You gotta call me or something, we have to get back in touch, because I haven't talked to anybody since then yet, except for Black. We already got in touch, but yeah, I lost everything, so you guys got to get in touch with me. I don't know your numbers and everything. I can't remember everything. I mean, I'm keeping track of timing and everything that's happening. Like, I have to pay attention to, the fact, like a factor that comes into play that I made use of today was, that it seems that if I'm pushing it, I can actually get like 5 to 6 minutes out of 1% of battery charge. But then if I'm actively using Liara, it's going to take like maybe 2% in 5 to 6 minutes. So that's calculations I have to put into play all day long. Shit like that, just little things like that. And I'm not a mathematician. I hate math. Like, I don't hate it, but I can't do it. I don't invest. I haven't invested the time into being good at math and learning how to do that, and I don't care to. So it's difficult for me to make these calculations, and I have to calculate the probabilities of what's going to happen depending on the moves that I make, and then I have to make those moves, and I have to make them hit, which takes effort to actually make, some of the values I put into play get to people and then stick, so that they actually cause a different, cause for people to take action later, depending on the probabilities that I thereby have to calculate in order to make sure, I have to make certain that some things do happen or other things won't work out the way that we need for them to. So these things that I'm constantly having to work with and the time of it. So obviously what I'm getting at is that I can't remember your phone numbers. I mean, at some point it becomes too much. So please do get in touch with me. I don't want to miss anything. Anyways, this video is regarding color coding. It's for Innocent Baku, who asked me to get into or explain to him primarily about blues, but I'm going to get into all the colors here because, as I was saying, I had to factory reset Liara, so now we have like a fuck ton of space. Like, I can do anything that I want to here. I can make movies for you guys if I knew how to do that. But so this video is regarding color coding and general personality profiling. Ultimately, our profiling schematic, but is going to be part of the anatomy, of course, and coming off the others. So we're going to compact everything here. We're going to put a lot of value and time into this. But first and foremost, Spotter's Challenge is in effect, and there is a value I'm putting into play right here and now that is very concrete yet insubstantial or indefinite, I suppose you could say, that is actually like right in front of you, and it's like I just told you guys. In fact, I gave it to you. I just told you precisely what it is. It's very concrete yet indefinite regarding color coding. Please fucking somebody spot this and comment. It's easy. It's like I just handed it to you. Come on. Anyways, yeah, I'm sad about that. The Trump video was bitching. I really nailed that guy. But now we got little watch you on it, and we're gonna we're gonna launch a full investigation into Donald Trump. We're gonna give you everything. And it's not like I don't hate the guy. I'm not intending to be an asshole to him, but I do come across an asshole because he's a fucking asshole, and it's difficult to not come across as being a dick with this guy because he's a fucking real hardcore dipshit. I'm sorry. Like I said, it's not like I don't hate the guy. I'm not against him, but being president, at some point you have to take certain things into account insofar as regards your own considerations regarding your very presence in the sense that we have somebody standing up on stage in front of the entire world representing us as a people. Anyways, regarding color coding, coming up from the anatomy course, we're going to cover this real quick, give a background for his, try to pack everything together. Beginning with nothing at all, that is void, that is to say void, just nada, essentially nothingness, indescribable, I suppose you could say. Nothing is happening. Never. There you go. I forgot that one. Never happens. Just never. No time, nothing at all. Just empty. Yeah, like not even emptiness. It's lack thereof. Absence. And then suddenly, something emerges. And this something, it needs to know what it is. So it reflects upon itself. That's all it can do. There's nothing else to be seeking. There's nothing else to take into consideration. So this something, it reflects upon itself, and suddenly that reflection becomes one second, and time emerges. We have value that comes off of that. Value is essentially definition. That's just ultimately what it is. Value is definition, but this definition is reasoning. It's questioning why this something that exists. It's asking the meaning of life, essentially. But, I mean, the concept of life hasn't even emerged yet, but the concept of being has emerged. And keep in mind, this is a concept. This is not an actual happening. There is no reality at this point. It's just, holy shit, what the fuck is happening, essentially. And in order to figure out what is happening, it has to ask why. It has to ask, why am I here? What am I? You know, essentially the ultimate bottom line questions. Who, what, when, where, why, how. And these have to pop up and become immediate imperatives. And what emerges from this are the values, the definitions of the reasonings as to why this is happening, essentially. What is this and why is it happening? Those are going to be the big questions to ask. Now, the initial values that pop up, obviously, as we've stated, are going to be memory, gravity, and relativity. That's what creates, essentially, something. It makes something happen. That's what it is. Memory, gravity, relativity, these elements of existence are what allow for us to create a construct. And the construct is going to be, memory is, say we have a discernment, we have a definition, we create a value, ultimately, we recognize a value and define it as being something, and then we remember it. We remember what it is, and thereby it remembers what it is in our conceptual, discernment, our creation. This something remembers what it is, but it has to go somewhere. It has to be something somewhere there has to be a construct in order to recognize this thing as being something. So we have gravity that holds it together and keeps it in a certain spot, a positioning. And then we have relativity, wherein we come upon two different reflections, two discernments, two values that are they only have any context within the framework of the context that they are reflecting off of each other, that there's a relativity in play. So that's how we have the three elements, or that's why we have the three elements, essentially. Why and how at this point are the same thing. I know that this is a little rough to follow, but I mean, this is how it works. There's no other way. I mean, we're coming out of absolute nothingness, an empty fucking, the absence of nothingness, even, because nothing is not even a concept at that point. There is no context or paradigm by which to define anything whatsoever. So this is how we have to do it. We start from scratch. As I stated in the Fundamentals from Scratch video, kind of covers this too, because it tells a story for the most part, but so go ahead and watch that if you want to. That's part of the secular theology course, I believe. Anyways, once we have those three elements in play, we're capable of creating as existential constructions, considerations, discernments, and so thereby we begin to create dimension. Dimension comes into play because we need somewhere to go, something to be. Like we're one-dimensional, just reflecting on ourselves, and there's nothing to be doing or going. There's no way to define ourselves insofar as regards having an experience, because there's nothing to be experienced. So we create a second dimension that allows for us to move around, and with the relativity in play between the first and second dimension, that allows for us to create a third dimension, or rather the illusion of a third dimension. But once we do in fact create the illusion of the second and third dimensions, this illusory framework that we're existing in, thereby we're viewing the first, second, and third dimension from an external source, so to speak, or from a differing, like, we're something observing these three dimensions, thereby we are the fourth dimension. There is a fourth dimensional parameter, which is very difficult to explain, and we still haven't gotten to the point where I can actually explain that, not only from your perspective, but from mine as well. Like, I don't know how to explain that I don't know how to give you an image of it. I can't, we haven't gotten there yet, but there is a fourth dimension, and that fourth dimension is where we're coming from. Dude, seriously, fuck off. Holy shit. So, sorry this is all scrambled, but I'm working from scratch here. So we have these three dimensions that we're capable of observing from a fourth dimensional perspective, and given the three elementary positioning factors of existence, three elementary values. But at this point, once we start viewing these dimensions, once we start essentially experiencing in these dimensions with the use of these elements, aspects are going to start popping off of things. The reflections that the values reflecting off of each other are going to start, like, once there are three or more values in play, essentially two or more than two, rather, once there are at least three or even more values in play reflecting off of each other, they're going to start to disagree. And when they do disagree, that's where aspects come into play, because aspects are essentially the method by which to look at something, which all of these are personalities, essentially. These are all the values that start to come into play and pop up, all the considerations, the discernments, the definitions, they're all pieces of our identity. They're all different pieces of ourselves that we've picked off and positioned somewhere to view, to reflect upon. And they're all personality. They're all pieces of our personality, and they begin to, when values start to come together and shards start to break off and become compound factors, compound values that create, definite, discernible personalities, those are, those are personas. Those create identities. Those become essentially what we think of as being souls, but it's all one soul. It's just one soul that's reflecting upon pieces of itself within itself and creating something that is essentially kind of exacerbating from the very initial identity, and it's fracturing into pieces, and it's creating all these different personalities when the values come together. And when these personalities reflect upon each other, there are aspects that pop off, because they're going to disagree. They're going to have differing perspectives. One identity is going to look upon another identity and think this or that about it, while another identity is going to look upon that identity, that same identity, and see it from a different light, because the time that's existing, the time that's been created with that 1 second, it's holographic in nature. So if you're looking at it from a differing perspective, different experiences have been, we've had different experiences. We refer to it as we now because it's differing identities. That's who and what we are. So, that's how a soul is born. Compound values create shards, and the shards come together to create a personality. But coming off of that personality, we have initial catalyst events, because the first experience, the first cause, the moment that we ask the reason why, the moment that we ask what's happening, why is this happening, there's going to be that first cause factor wherein we just suddenly wake up in the never and are like shocked by it, perplexed, holy shit, what the fuck, essentially is going to be the feeling I think that we're going to have at that point. And I've been to the never, I've had this feeling, so this is my reflection upon it. This whole framework are aspects of what I'm seeing from my perspective. I'm just giving you my perspective on it. So that's what I saw, that's what I felt, holy shit, what the fuck, and I didn't say I was terrified, but That's what I'm seeing. And once that initial first cause is put into play, there are what we think of as being artifacts of the first cause, remnants of the initial reaction, that are these catalyst events. And the catalyst events are represented as the chakras. And there is the root chakra, which is sexuality. Essentially, it's survival, it's necessity, it's the concept of necessity, ultimately, that something is needed and that we need to survive because it's as though time is running out. We have an expiration date, is essentially the concept that's put into play at that root, that we have a certain time frame within which we need to get something done for some reason, and that's what creates the whole concept of experience really itself, is that idea that we are existing within a certain span, that we need to be accomplishing something within, and in order to do that, we need something in order to survive, because, I'm sorry this is so complicated, but this is how it works, really, is the values that are coming into play there are that we have a fucking finish line, we have a deadline, and we need to be accomplishing something within that deadline, and because of that, we have the concept of requiring something to survive, as though we're running out of time, and we need to create more time by consuming. These are the factors that essentially create life. That's the idea, the concept that's creating the construct for what life becomes. Then from that, we have the second chakra in the gut there, that is, concerning fuel and consumption, fuel, the idea that we need to consume something in order to survive. Again, the initial chakra is essentially becomes reproduction. It becomes the necessity to continue fracturing and creating more pieces and recreating ourselves in order to continue surviving. And then the second chakra is, concerning the fuel, or the, whatever it is that we are requiring in order to survive. And the third chakra therein is the heart, which is going to be regarding ultimately the concept there is regarding what we are invested in or what we love. It's feeling in and of itself. It's the emotional factor that comes into play, wherein ultimately we have things that we like and dislike, and from there, it's really, that's it. It's positive and negative. It's things that we are attracted to and things that we're repelled from, and that creates the concept of like and dislike, the concept of good and bad, the concept of right and wrong, the concept of good and evil, light and darkness. That creates the defined dichotomy, and that's why the heart is the symmetrical center, and it's thought of as being the core, the origin. That's why it is thought of as being our antecedent property, the heart chakra and the heart itself. And that's why people speak of coming from the heart and coming back to source, is because that is in fact where the defined dichotomy comes into play and creates a duality. And the duality is resounding factors, everything, and that duality in fact creates the very construct of eternity itself, because eventually at the edges of where you reach the boundary, there are paradoxes that occur, wherein one thing cannot exist without the other, yet one thing is seeming to exist as being absent of the other. It's just impossibilities that occur regarding the ultimate dualities in play. And we'll get to that later. That's reaching out beyond where we're coming from here, but then we get to the throat chakra, which is regarding our intelligence, essentially. It's regarding our ability to communicate, our ability to process discernments and negotiate with each other, for differing factors to actually regard each other in a sense that is familiar to them, and the ability to, generally the concept of communication in and of itself. And then, the concept of communication is our ultimate intelligence. and that's where language is going to have come from and all of that. These are tricky. I can't get into all of it here. I'm just going to try and wing it, but then we get to the third eye chakra, it's a pineal gland. And in the human body, it's the pineal gland. But these catalyst events exist in the overall identity. That's what we're getting at here, really. But they exist in the God figure has these chakras in play, these catalyst events. The third eye is regarding understanding, finally seeing, finally getting to the point where we have an understanding of things. And essentially that's the concept of creating an understanding, because again, coming back to the beginning or the finish line, there is no understanding. There's nothing to be understood. We're making it up as we go along. The very concept of physics itself is put into play by our discernment of what we think we understand. It's knowing. That third eye is what is known, and that's what actually fucking, that's what makes things happen. That's what makes things real, essentially, is the concept of what we know, what is known. What you absolutely know for certain, that is what is real. And if you can change your mind on what you know, if one person could actually convince themselves that they know something that was unknown before, it will become real. That's the power you have, the power of heaven. And again, it's that simple. You have this power because there are no rules. There never were. We've been making them up as we go along. These catalyst events are concepts. They're not realities. They're the conceptual framework that we put into play as we moved along this initial big bang of identity itself. The fracturing of soul. And so that third eye is going to be representative of what we see. It's what we make happen. It's what we know to be real, what we put into play. Now that crown, the final one, that's getting back, that's getting out of it, that's actually escaping, and it's regarding spirituality, essentially. It's regarding spirituality in general, but we have religion attached to that. The aspect that pops off of that value, that catalyst event, is the religious factor, and the idea of dogmas and laws discerning our very persona. Ultimately, the aspect that's clouding that's the escape point. That's where we actually get back to knowing that there is no such thing as known, and getting back to the reality, the actual happening reality, which is coming back to the never. Again, we begin, we end there, the alpha and the omega. That's the God point, is that crown chakra opening up. But it's blocked up by religious concepts, by the very concept of religion in and of itself, the idea that there are actual rules in play regarding who and what we are, the concept that there is an objective persona, which there is not. There's no such thing as an objective persona, because you might think you're somebody, you think you are who you are and what you are, based on these catalyst events are going to have values that kind of gravitate toward them. They're gravity points for value itself. That's where how magnetic compatibility works, is these catalyst events have a gravitational pull of their own that attracts values that compound around, that hover that orbit them, essentially, and compound together and create communities. Ultimately, that what comes off of the catalyst events are going to be communities of people coming together, personalities, identities coming together under the guise, essentially, of a common purpose or a common concern. Like the sexuality community, the gender communities, LGBTQ, that sort of thing. The religious communities, obviously, the religious and spiritual communities, scientific community, the artistic community. These are communities that are resounding or they're gravitating towards these catalyst events. So it's like the symptoms, of that kundalini opening up, and in the overall, in the world, the kundalini of the world opening up, and the symptoms of it being blocked are these communities that isolate. The communities are dividing. The very fact that there are communities in play is bringing into play the concept of division, of people being divided into little sects and such, and little gangs for the most part, which that concept of division ultimately is the block. That's what's blocking up the Kundalini, division itself, and that's why we need to be working towards eliminating division. That's why that's the goal. That's the status imperative. The imperative of our overall status. So, and we are, our organization as it stands is status initiative, as in we are the ones taking the initiative to course correct our status and awaken this Kundalini and end division. There are concepts in play of people think that they're light or dark. There's this war happening between all these differing concepts of division between that divine dichotomy. We're the neutral ground, and we need to be bringing them together and ending this feud. That's our goal. Anyways, as I stated, there is no objective persona, but we have created, our own sort of our own sort of paradigm of personality profiling. It's the the bottom line in the Status Initiative's curriculum, essentially, is insofar as regards our training protocol. But the colors are, as I've stated, blue, red, and green. Now I'll cover the first two first, so that we can drag on blues. Reds are emotionally based. Those are the spiritual people. Those are people who have a sincerely deep and invested spiritual interest, and the people who have, these are going to be the empaths, the people who really feel emotions, who have a very strong sense of empathy. Their ultimate kind of innate ability. They have an innate. Everybody's got like a superpower, sort of, in the framework of this context. Reds are empathic, and they can feel the emotions of others, they can pick up on the emotions of others, but they can also tune the emotions of others. By controlling their own emotional state and resounding it, they can actually affect and alter the emotions of others at will. And there are people who can do this. My ex-wife, Sweetie Cheek, she's amazingly powerful at this. She's the battery for us. Like, if I feel down, I can go to her and she'll pick me up just by being there. And I know it's a familial thing because I'm in love with her, but she can do it to other people too. Like crowds of people, she can do this. So that's a very sincerely powerful ability to have, that she can do that empaths can do this. And that's something that empaths need to learn too, because I don't think a lot of them know this. They feel as though they're like cursed by it, that they feel everybody else's emotions, but I don't think a lot of them realize that they can actually control other people's emotions. Like, that's an ability. It's not a curse, it's a power, and it's a responsibility. Responsibility. Depending on how you respond to it, it does in fact become an ability. So